can always tell which male rabbis are going to the bar and bat mitzvah based upon whether they're wearing a tie or not. How many of you have come to that understanding from years of coming here? So we could fool you by putting a tie on, taking it off, and wearing it here, but that's the signal. So in the sanctuary tonight, they're going to be reading from the opening chapters of the fourth book in the Torah called Bamidbar in Hebrew and Numbers in English. Two names. Numbers due to the statistical material which opens the book, God's command to count every firstborn male. Remember, they were involved in armies and thinking about who they needed in that area. Bamidbar, desert or wilderness, reminds us of the journey of our people with Moses in the Sinai Desert. Tonight, my focus is not going to be on the census piece, but rather on the Hebrew name Bamidbar. Now, consider for a moment what you think about when you consider desert. Many images can come to mind. White sand covering vast areas of land. Heat. A burning sun pouring down on you. Ancient camel trains, caravans carrying spices over vast pieces of land. Or perhaps a dashing hero riding on a white Arabian stallion. This one will date you. My most memorable desert experiences consistently happened in Israel. There's no place I really enjoy on all of my trips and journeys to Israel than in the Negev Desert today and formerly in my many visits to the Sinai Desert. Now, I'm often asked the following question. Since you've been to Israel so many times, do you ever see anything new? And consistently, my answer is yes. This past December, with our Temple Israel family mission, I was watching the most adventurous of our participants, not always the youngest, sliding down the side of a sandhill in the Negev. A beautiful section of this desert transformed by a creative entrepreneur into an area where a bus unloads and people play soccer, play volleyball, or continue to slide for hours. But as I was not participating in any of those adventurous moments, watching this from a high peak, my mind went to memories of my earliest Israel experiences in the Sinai Desert, the setting for our book of Bamidbar. Just one example. We were in Egypt with a group of teenagers, 40 or so, on our Temple Israel mission. Now, how many of you remember the days when airlines gave you an extra free stop on the way to anywhere? Shake your heads if you remember that. You've got to be at least 70 years old or above, but it was a great time. We took a group of teenagers to Amsterdam. That was a questionable trip. It was a great experience. Don't let anyone ever tell you that being placed in the city of Amsterdam in a hotel right next to the red light district is not a good idea. But back to Egypt. After spending a few days in Cairo, imagine riding camels to the pyramids, 40 kids, and we had our little babies with us at the time. I was carrying one, Susan another, on top of a camel, visiting museums, exploring the sites. We traveled to Mount Sinai. We experienced Yetziat Mitzrayim, the Exodus without Pharaoh's army chasing us, and then the moment of revelation. Waking at 2 a.m., we climbed for 3 hours, lit by a canopy of stars to the top of the mountain, and it was truly magical. We were standing in the place where, according to our tradition, Moses received the Ten Commandments, an event that in a few days we will celebrate on Shavuot and also through confirmation. The Sinai, with this Mount Sinai moment, sadly, is one of the experiences no longer a part of teen missions. When Israel returned the Sinai Peninsula to Egypt in a peace agreement in 1982, it was no longer reasonable to enter into the area. Yes, Israel returned land won in war to an enemy in the hope of peace. And this is one agreement, a land for peace moment, although at times tense, that has truly been successful. Although I have had the privilege and the joy of traveling to many places in the world, I have rarely felt the sense of peace of my visits to during those years to Sinai. It was there that I discovered that a desert is not a wasteland. It's not empty, it's not void. In the desert are some of the most beautiful, magnificent of sights, the most interesting. One night, on another trip in Sinai with a different group of teens, we were camping by a spring that enabled a local survival of a local Bedouin population. In another location, there are patches of flowers nurtured by underground springs, and you all of a sudden see palm trees. The desert presents magnificent rock formations shaped by years of climate change. You search for animals of the desert, most often venturing out at night to find sustenance. The majesty of the desert is described by Paolo Cole. Simplicity is the heart of everything. If you look to the desert, apparently the desert is very simple, but it's full of life. It's full of hidden places. And the beauty is that it looks simple, but it's complex in the way that it expresses the soul of the world of God. Simplicity and complexity, two words that bring clarity to the desert experience. Learning how to survive in the desert, even for those of us who are there only for a few days, is challenging. One of my favorite memories was waking up one morning on the Red Sea. Two other groups had arrived after our teen group had gone to sleep. The first family of Bedouin, dressed in layers of black robes that would protect them from the sun. You always think, why do they dress that way? But we find that it enables sweat to gather and they are protected from the sun around them. The second, a group of travelers from Sweden, barely dressed, entering the water, surely to be burned as the heat of the day moved already to 100 plus degrees. I will not tell you which group attracted the most attention from our teens. Until I camped in the desert, I did not understand the story of the children of Israel wandering for 40 years in the desert after the Exodus. Our ancestors were traveling on orderly paths from one oasis to the next. They were not simply wanderers waiting for the older enslaved generation to die. They were like the Bedouin that I sat and had coffee with and tea with, who explained that the desert is a complex place. But I understood that they could read signs that we can barely imagine. Those skilled see the following: a thistle bush tied in a special way, indicating that a marriage was taking place. The bush, an invitation to everyone who knew how to read the words not written. Tents, sometimes you'll see them in the desert, hanging, waiting for a seasonal return. Nomads, no one else would touch. Unfortunately, when you read about Sinai today, the focus is not on the beauty of the desert, but rather focuses on drugs being carried from one place to another, or terrorists being arrested by Egypt at times supported by Israeli soldiers. You see, the desert has beauty, but it also has scorpions and poisonous snakes and other deadly animals. The desert, however, to those who love it, is beautiful and inspiring. You've already heard other clergy talk about this time of year and the fact that we really should put away our phones, all the things that keep us connected. We need moments of we need moments of calm. So I'm going to ask, as we enter into the summer, think for a moment of how you want this summer to unfold. Are you prepared to take a moment for yourself to rest, to relax, to find what I think of as the desert experience? Boy, do we need days when we don't wake up and read or hear the news, the disturbing headlines, the tragic reports, from daily shootings in the street to another flood or fire, racist or anti-Semitic attack. We all need desert moments. Spring leads to summer, a time of rebirth in nature, an opportunity for all of us, no matter how busy we are, no matter how challenged we feel, to simply pause, relax, and find peace. On this Shabbat of Bamidbar, I wish for each of us a lovely walk in a park, a visit to a beautiful garden, which I experienced already this spring, or if you're able, a hike into the wonderful mountains, a time without all of the things that distract. How brilliant are the camps that tell campers that they have to leave technology at home. We need space to reflect and consider what is really important to us. How can we find real meaning in our lives? How can we bridge gaps that might have been created in relationships? We need space and time to reflect and consider. In a moment, you will hear an anthem, a reminder of our place in the world. One line, every first and every last, all of the future, the present, and even the past. I am a wave, a rise and a fall, a singular drop in the ocean connected to all. We are welcomed into the desert. We are welcomed into whatever place we inhabit. We are welcomed into places where we find joy and love. We are that singular drop in the waters of the world, but we are also tied together, finding peace and joy and hopefully shalom. Amen.